Our collusion and corruption segment tonight. Another day of hearings targeting Trump campaign officials and their connections to the Russians during the campaign. And another batch of information that isn't damning to anybody. Carter Page, a former Trump campaign unpaid foreign policy advisor, testified in front of the House Intel Committee this week. And afterwards, they released the transcripts. This is what we learned and what the mainstream media probably won't tell you because it doesn't help their false narrative. With me now to break it down from the Center for Security Policy, Fred Fleitz. Fred, good to see you.
Hey, Liz, good to be here.
All right, Fred, I want to start with the House Intel Committee, and then we're going to move over to the Senate Intel Committee, because as you know, they have those the tandem investigations going on right now. But the Carter Page information, he testified for hours and hours. I think it was something like 6 or 7 hours in front of the House Intel Committee. He said that everything about him within the Trump dossier, meaning the dossier put together by Fusion GPS, who had subcontracted Christopher Steele, all those allegations about Trump and Russia, Carter Page testified that all the information in there about him was completely false. And then he added that it was also responsible for all his legal troubles. But the pertinent part of that is it's all false. Do we have proof of that?
Well, I don't know whether I don't know whether I can prove or disprove that, but what I found astounding here is that apparently FBI investigations of Page were sparked by this dossier. This goes against the media narrative and the Democratic narrative that this was just mere opposition research that's done all the time. No, it wasn't. This was a foreign intelligence officer paid by the Democrats to work with the Russians to prepare a dossier to smear a presidential candidate from the other party. This is not opposition research. And if they got the FBI involved into investigating members of the other party, Liz, think what would have happened if Trump had did this. Just think about it.
Right. I mean, he would have faced allegations that he'd used the government as a weapon against his opposition. That's essentially what the Hillary Clinton campaign did. I don't know who instigated it. This is why I agree that we need a special prosecutor to dig into this, because it's rather large allegations. It's not just the fact that the Hillary Clinton campaign or the DNC paid a shady smear merchant for opposition research. They're technically allowed to do that by law, even if it's not the moral thing to do or the ethical thing to do. But if Fusion GPS hired Christopher Steele, which they did, if Christopher Steele worked with the Russians to get this information, which we think he did, and if the FBI then used that information, which was fed to them from the Russians via Christopher Steele as justification for those FISA warrants, I mean, that is quite something.
Yeah, I think that's right. First of all, I suspect that because this opposition research or whatever it was not declared to the FEC, there's some legal issues here. But the fact is that they were paying a foreign intelligence officer in some kind of a scheme that involved the FBI, and it went on for months. They didn't tell the FBI they were behind it, and that this information was actually briefed as part of the presidential daily brief to Donald Trump in January, and the Democrats didn't say anything. I mean, there are a lot of questions that have to be answered here.
Right, and the monetary impropriety that you're talking about, just to make it clear to our viewers, the DNC and the Hillary Clinton campaign they reported their finances, and they said that this was legal fees because they had used their lawyer, Mark Elias, as the go-between. The lawyer was the one who actually hired Fusion GPS, who hired Christopher Steele. So they didn't talk about it being opposition research. They called it legal fees, and that may be fraudulent reporting. That needs to be investigated too. To go back to the House Intel Committee just for a second, Carter Page's testimony, the allegations against Page himself, the reason that he's under fire here is because in this dossier, the dossier alleges that he met that Page was one of 2 unnamed campaign officials who met with officials in Moscow during the campaign. So One America News broke a story today that a scoop from the email from Carter Page to other campaign officials talking about this trip to Moscow, and none of the topics discussed in this email had anything that he planned to talk about in Moscow had anything whatsoever to do with the Donald Trump campaign.
I think that's right. And I mean, there's a variety of things in this dossier that are absolutely false, like people supposedly in a certain city. The record shows that they weren't there. I mean, this is just one of many examples. This is not opposition research. This was information that was fabricated to hurt Trump in any way possible. And some of it is clearly and easily proven false.
Right, and then to pivot over to the Senate Intel Committee for a moment, Senator Mark Warner, he's the ranking Democrat on the Senate Intel Committee, by the way. He has recently come out and said that Christopher Steele, the foreign intelligence agent who was hired by Fusion GPS, Steele has refused to meet with the Senate Intel Committee to discuss the dossier. I mean, Fred, in my opinion, the fact that Christopher Steele, who's the one who was supposed to actually have had contact with the Russians, won't deny under oath to the Senate that he has, that's relatively damning.
No, I think it is. What are they hiding? Why does Fusion GPS not want to release its financial records? So we know everybody involved, everybody who's funding this. Obviously, they're hiding something. No, they were trying to hide that the Democratic Party and the Clinton campaign was behind funding this. That came out. This isn't a free speech issue. This is something the American people need to know because it basically represented corruption to influence the outcome of the election. And I don't think people should be hiding behind fake freedom of information or fake privacy concerns to hide this kind of stuff.
No, well, it's hilarious to me that the Democrats have spent the last year, over a year, since Donald Trump even got the nomination, last July it was, they've spent the last year talking about how dangerous it is if Russia impacts or influences our election process in any way. We actually have evidence with this Trump dossier that they did feed fake news, false information that influenced our election, yet because Democrats have their hands dirty in this, they don't care. That's hilarious to me. Fred, thanks for breaking it down as always. I appreciate it.